We live in an age of global communication. Earth has become a village where broadcasting carries news and views between nations and continents. Television provides insights, opinions and contact between governments and citizens at times of peace and of war. Yet giving access to these platforms has also become a political weapon. Press TV and other Iranian channels have been subjected to a series of bans by European institutions and satellite companies. They have been taken off air in countries such as the United Kingdom, France, Spain and Germany. The reason given for this censorship by the satellite companies is that they are merely complying with European Union sanctions against Iran. So, is this an example of the broadcasting industry respecting the law, or is it something more sinister? That's the simple question we're determined to answer. Although television provides entertainment, it also provides perspective on local and international affairs. Every day, thousands of interviews and current affairs programs keep millions of people up to date with what's going on locally and abroad. Nobody expects politicians and commentators to agree with each other all the time. On the contrary, it is often the case that these discussions are valuable because of the differences. Alternative views underpin modern political debate and give the public the chance to make up their own minds once they've heard the facts and opinions. So what is the right balance between freedom of speech and censorship? Is it acceptable to ban some views to protect society in some way? And who is best placed to decide what should be broadcast and what should be taken off air? We began by asking the public whether government ought to have the power to decide which controversial broadcast channels and which outspoken opinions should be allowed on television and which should be banned. Here's what they said. In your opinion, should governments have the right to decide what you can watch on television and what you can't?
No, not at all. I personally think that the government has nothing to do with a TV, with a internet, any kind of media.
No, because I believe in the freedom of press, so I don't think it should be regulated by a higher power.
Yes, they should, to a certain extent. They have to be custodian of what's relevant for the people.
In your opinion, do you think governments should have the right to decide what channels you're allowed to watch and which should be banned?
Yes, I do.
Bits and pieces should be told, yeah. We should always know about what's going on, even if we don't necessarily know every single detail. We should know what's happening.
No, because that would introduce political bias.
We turned to our experts and asked them if they felt that government should have the ability to decide which broadcasts are allowed and which should be banned.
It is quite recognized that the governments should not control the broadcasting or the direction of broadcasting, and to do so it will become sort of promoted dictatorial sort of structure. There are issues as regard as the responsibility of governments to have some regulations over the broadcasting. But to say who should broadcast and what to broadcast in general is unacceptable.
Governments, under international law, all governments, as far as I know, have a duty to preserve public morality, for example, not to broadcast items which are offensive to minors, i.e. children, or could cause crime and disruption. However, the British government and all the European governments maximise to the as far as possible items which are antisocial in broadcasting, such as pornography and gambling and so on. Now, having maximised all the negative aspects of modern society, when there is a really serious station broadcasting seeks to inform the public, howbeit from a specific point of view, the British government and all the European governments jumped down that particular company's throat. In other words, if there's anything sensible is if there's anything constructive, if there is anything on the media that's actually introducing dialogue and understanding, the immediate reaction of the British authorities is to ban it.
Repeatedly, the European Union has claimed to uphold freedom of expression. But how comfortably does that claim fit with the banning of certain television channels? What does this kind of censorship by European satellite companies mean for freedom to obtain news? Here's what the public thinks.
Is censorship of channels, in your view, a restriction of your civil liberties in a democracy?
I don't see it as a restriction of my civil liberties. I probably wouldn't even notice if it was happening or not. Don't watch a huge amount of television anyway, and it's not my only source of information, so you just go somewhere else.
I've never known anything to be censored apart from things that are particularly bad, so no.
In terms of censorship, do you think the censorship of channels, which actually is happening at the moment, some channels have been banned, do you think that's a violation of your civil liberties in a free country?
Yes. Yeah, I would like to see why they've been banned. We should be told about it.
It is, yes, providing that those satellite stations aren't used for subversive purposes.
Absolutely. If governments or societies are taking things off air because they feel that they don't want the public to know things, that's absolutely wrong and completely unacceptable.
What do our experts feel about how this kind of censorship from European satellite companies influences freedom to obtain news?
Our freedom to have access to the media that we choose to listen to, it's very important. We really need to have the whole spectrum of the information, and then we should make a decision on what information we accept and what information we don't accept. And the fact that there is channels like the Press TV have managed to give completely different view, and indeed very informed view, and those who have watched it, including ministers or ex-ministers of British Parliament, have said that they couldn't get that news anywhere else. So the fact that we as citizens of the world will be denied that information, that is actually infringement of our freedom of choice. That's infringement of our human rights, and that's infringement of our ability to choose for ourselves.
Censorship of news, information and reception is contrary to Article 10 of the European Convention of Human Rights. Now, everyone is entitled to receive news. If news is interfered with by government, it would be in a case of a national emergency. But even during World War II, we didn't stop the Germans broadcasting to UK. In fact, Lord Haw had a very large audience here. Now, why there should be this serious attack upon the European Union citizens' right to receive news and information is, to me, in my mind, totally hard to fathom out. I can't understand it. It's totally irrational and a contravention of EU policy and statute law.
Some media activists say censorship is an open attack against free speech. They point out these European institutions claim to support access to a diverse range of views. However, by banning broadcasts which challenge government thinking, they do not live up to that promise. The EU denies pushing for a ban against Iranian channels like Press TV. It has been hard to establish exactly where this pressure has been coming from. However, when asked if the driving force was commercial or political, we had some interesting views from the public.
Who's putting pressure on the satellite companies? Some higher organizations, so probably the government, I'd say.
I have no idea, other than no idea.
The governments are probably censoring it, checking if they think it's appropriate. I mean, obviously I don't know why that they're doing that. Perhaps they feel that some of the messages are not helpful, but no, absolutely, I think that's wrong. I think that's not acceptable.
Islamophobic bodies, organisations.
We put the same question to our experts and asked them if they had a general view on where this kind of pressure to ban channels such as Press TV might be coming from.
The reality is that EU articulates very clearly that sanctions have got nothing to do whatsoever with the closure of the channels from Iran, including Press TV. But we see day by day these channels are being shut down by different excuses, by different structures, and they all using the sanctions as excuse. Now, when you sort of dig a bit deeper, you come to the realization that most of the initiators of this sort of direction are heads of particular international and national organizations, which happen to be at the same time Zionist or pro-Zionist, or their history actually shows that this movement is being directed to support the Zionist entity and to shut the voice of the Palestinians. And then and it's been, example, Press TV has been extremely effective in that area.
The question is, who's putting pressure on satellite companies to shut down these broadcasts and why? And the EU denies having actually accelerated or pushed for a ban. Well, I think we can, to some degree, accept the EU assurance on that, because it's very clear that the centre of the conspiracy to deprive Europeans of their freedom to receive news and information is not in Europe, but is in Washington. It is in Washington, in the United States of America, there is a very irrational element who have taken control of American foreign policy. And these benighted people are known as neocons, neoconservatives. Many of these people are under the control of or influenced by the Zionist creed, and in particular, a large number of them are what we call Christian Zionists. Now, out of their total ignorance, they've ended up seeking to destroy the free will of Europeans to tune in to channels they want to listen to or look at.
Channels such as Press TV are also well known for exposing human rights abuses by, for example, Western countries like the United Kingdom, the United States, and also Israel. Is it right for these countries to suppress that kind of reporting on the basis that it makes for uncomfortable coverage of these governments?
Well, I think it is quite obvious of the three countries that you mentioned, Israel has the most to lose, because Israel as a nation, and this is not anti-Semitic comment, it's a political comment, Israel as a state and as a nation violates human rights of the Palestinians on a daily basis, on an hourly basis.
Yeah, I don't think any of them feel threatened.
I think all three of them, particularly Israel, what's happening to Palestinians wouldn't be accepted anywhere else in the world.
I'm not sure, because I don't really follow these news that much, so I wouldn't be able to comment on that, to be honest.
Well, that's a very good question. It depends what the stories are, because I'm not really sure. I would have thought that it's not in the US's interest sometimes to have certain things shown through these channels, but it's not their duty to be able to ban people from seeing things. If we as a country or as a society or as a world have a better idea about what's actually going on, what people are actually doing, then we can all together make a much better choice about how to live together.
We turned to our experts and asked them if they felt there was any moral justification for the banning of channels which highlight alleged human rights abuses in the West.
As a human rights activist, I really recognize that Press TV, for example, has exposed certain aspects of the human rights abuses, like the situation of Rohingyas, the situation of Palestinians, the situation of in Kashmir, and indeed some of the human rights abuses by the West regarding drones and Guantanamo, Abu Ghraib, and etc., etc. And that is really one of the reasons they are being targeted. I mean, the reality is that State of Israel in particular cannot stomach any exposure of its apartheid, illegal activities, their genocidal policies, and their ethnic cleansing policies. And an international media have been totally controlled.
Press TV is known for its investigative reporting on issues of injustice, whether they be in Israel or UK or in the United States. I would have thought that Israel probably feels most threatened because Israel, for all its claims to be a constitutional democracy in the Middle East, has a very large number of political prisoners who've not been tried and are simply languishing in Israeli jails. However, on the other hand, UK government and the United States have got so many skeletons in their closet.
Does banning outspoken channels and those presenting an alternative view serve a useful purpose in the eyes of citizens? Does it make them feel more protected or in some way safer? We asked the public.
Do you think that censorship and that kind of banning serves a useful and necessary purpose in an alleged free society?
If it was related to national security, I'd say yes, it would be.
Could do, and so, similarly it can be a bad thing. We can lead people into a false sense of security. It depends, really.
Not at all, absolutely not. No, because it's somebody else deciding what we should and shouldn't see. So people are suffering elsewhere and we're not aware of it.
Does censorship serve a useful purpose in a free society?
No.
Well, it depends what you're banning. So yes, in some circumstances, no in others.
Basically, no. If anything, I mean, the bottom line is it makes it unsafe. It makes it more dangerous because people are not aware of what's going on.
We turn to our experts for their perspective.
In today's world, what is really very clear is access to information and understanding of what is happening in the world and different aspects of it is what has actually saved us from further conflict. Conflicts around the world could only benefit from one-sided view, prejudiced view of an event. And the fact that we will have different aspects and different sort of angles of looking at something, which gives us the understanding into the real sort of complexity of any given situation. And only then we could actually find solution to it. And it will not, in reality what happens is that if the media is controlled by one view, then atrocities around the world and ability of powers to manipulate and use their power to oppress people becomes much more dominant.
I'm of the view that actually banning broadcasts is a good thing when they are destructive to public morality and generally destructive to the country or the continent. I don't think Europe has gained a great deal by becoming the sort of pornocracy where, anything goes as far as television is concerned. But when it comes to news broadcasts, that's a completely different thing. That news broadcast informs us about what's going on in the world. And this is the very item that should not be banned by the European Union or by Ofcom or by Eutelsat or by Intelsat. The banning of Press TV's news channels And by banning, I do not mean them being thrown off the air altogether, because they're still on the internet, etc. But the removal of Press TV from platforms such as Sky and Eutelsat and Intelsat, etc. That is an absolutely a catastrophic and destructive decision, which shows the contempt that broadcasters have for the people of Europe.
This leads to the most important question of all. In an age where you can watch Press TV and anything else on the internet, does the censorship by government of channels such as Press TV serve any legitimate or useful purpose at all?
In a day when you can get anything on the internet anyway, including all the banned channels, is there really any point in banning the satellite output?
I don't think so, no.
No, again, because you're bringing different point of view without a vested interest. I watch this Press TV myself, and it's giving you another point of view, as I said, without the bias of Fox News or American propaganda or British or European propaganda.
I think it is a very simple question. They will never be able to control it. I mean, the only way to control it is to shut the whole of the internet down.
In a day when, through the internet, you can actually view all of the broadcast channels, which have been banned anyway, does censorship work?
No, that's a very good question. The answer is probably no.
I don't think a country can ever control what people think. I think they can try, obviously, certain people, but if people want to know what's happening, they'll find out.
We turn to our experts and ask them if they could see any merit in banning television channels when you can get exactly the same information through a computer.
See, the reality is that we are moving to a new arena of the new technology, and we are able to get our information from internet, and that is becoming much faster. And we see new inventions and new ways of doing so, and the speed of our internets are increasing on a very fast scale. So we are able to get our information from alternative media. But having said that, still up to today, the fact that you sit in front of your television and you click between different channels and then have access to more views than one, it still is very prominent. And it is that ability that people are trying to sort of deny our viewers and ordinary viewers to have access to alternative media. Those who seek alternative media currently could access it, but those who just sit on the front of their television and click and flick over between different channels are being denied.
Press TV and other channels are well known for having the confidence to expose human rights abuses and acts of war by the United Kingdom, America and Israel. Some Western commentators believe that this is sufficient reason to ban those broadcasters. But as we have seen, the public disagrees. The public feels a tolerant society should accommodate different views, and that this is the true test of a free society. European institutions may not find those news reports comfortable, but freedom of speech requires them to provide a platform for dissenting voices. So will decision makers permit channels such as Press TV to continue to broadcast their alternative views? If not, then European politicians undermine the very values which they claim to uphold.